Tony Will. I'm back with another fabulous guest today. But before we dive into my guest, let's talk about what Women In is. It's a podcast that celebrates women in all walks of life and the people in their lives who are lifting them up. You're going to hear from all kinds of super cool people in my life, and they're going to share their stories to inspire others to support the extraordinary women around them. This is a space to be disruptive, forward-thinking, and change agents for humankind. It is uncensored, fun, and curiosity-driven. This is what I'm passionate about, breaking down barriers for my kids' generation. It's equal parts about my guests and the places we came into each other's lives, whether it be the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, Tony Will Coaching, or they happen to be my family and friends circle, which this guest falls into many categories. And I'm excited to welcome Sara Doell. I'm going to read your bio, Sara, because it's just so cool. Sara is a CLCC certified life coach, a Division I collegiate golf coach, and a lifetime member of the LPGA, and an Amazon best-selling author of 2 books, Your Future Self Will Thank You, and Next Time, Leave Me on the Floor, which, by the way, both of those books I have read and are on my nightstand. She grew up in Rochester, New York, attended Penn State University, and played on scholarship for the golf team. After stints in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Brooklyn, New York, she found her way to the West Coast. She lives in San Francisco with her wife, Kat, and their mini Dachshund.
Dachshund. People say
Dachshund. Mr. Harvey Milk.
He might bark in the background, so we'll see.
All right, I won't say his name too loud. He's snoozing. But Sara, welcome. I'm so glad to have you on the Women In.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have a great conversation.
I love it. I can't wait to talk about books because you are a best-selling author, which we're going to talk about a lot of different things, and a way better golfer than me. Although I want to tell you that I'm actually naturally a decent golfer. I just don't have time to do it. I tell my husband all the time I'm naturally good at it.
Well, me too. I work in the golf business now. I'm entering my 20th year of college coaching, and I don't play a lot of golf.
Really?
Right? I watch golf for a living. So one of the last things I want to do on my off day is go back to the golf course, right? But this past week I taught a golf camp, and at the end of each day we went and we played or hit balls, and I was like, I've still got it. I'm still pretty good. It's fine.
Well, you got to be a coach. Isn't it interesting about being a coach? And, obviously, well, let's step back before we dive into this, because people are going to probably assume that we met through our sports careers.
Nope.
But we did not. So how did we meet?
The wonderful Peggy Cooney introduced us via email. Peggy wrote a book called This Side of Alcohol. In fact, she wrote the foreword for my second book. And Peggy is a connector. And I've had at least 5 emails where she's sent an email to me and someone else, and you two should meet. And so we did. And I remember we had a great conversation. And then as I was finishing up writing this book, I was thinking about people that I would love to have their input on the book. And you were one I reached out to, and graciously you wrote a praise for the book that is inside the book. And we've only really met on a video chat one time.
I know.
Here we are.
I know. And that's like the power of, Peggy was a guest on my podcast. Now her episode is going to be released here in the next few weeks. I'd have to look at the schedule, but all the listeners will get to know who Peggy is. But she is the ultimate connector. And when you and I met, I felt immediately like, again, it is because you and I share more in common because we both work in sports, but then our alcohol-free journeys. And so it was just like immediately we had this great connection. And when I was putting this podcast together, you were top on my list. And actually it was funny because Peggy said, "Did you reach out to Sara?" I go, "I already did." And you were busy because I think one of your golfers was like, you'd have to explain it, but was off golfing. And
we went to, one of our best players made it to postseason on her own because our team didn't make it this year. So our season lasted longer than it has in the past, which is a good thing. And it's been pretty busy. So I'm finally able to sit down for a little bit and catch up on stuff.
Yeah, you and I are having off seasons. They're very similar in terms of because we went into playoffs and it ended at the very end of April. Was it April? Yes. And a very long 7-month season. And so I totally understand what it feels like to be able to come up for air. Because if sports it'll burn us out if we're not careful.
Oh yeah, and with college golf, we're a fall and spring sport. Some people don't know that. Most sports, they're either fall, winter, or spring. Our fall and our spring matter the same amount. It's all towards ranking, win loss, scoring average. And so in the fall, we're running from middle of August till November 1st. We're in season. Then we go into like our partial off season. You're still doing stuff. And then the team's gone for about a month at Christmas. You come back and we go from middle of January through hopefully the end of May. And it's a lot. And then you turn around, you've got recruiting all summer, and then you turn around and do it again. It's one of the sports that you have to find ways to not burn out.
So let's talk about burnout for a minute,
Yeah.
because this is something that I feel like I got pretty darn close before I just got back from a 2 week vacation. Literally, I flew in yesterday, and but I think I was darn close to burnout, but I had to look it up because I'm like, I don't know. You know what it reminded me of when I first wanted to stop drinking? I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't know. Like, I just start Googling things. What is burnout? So tell me do you know what it feels like to you? Have you been burned out and how do you avoid it?
If I had the answer to that, my life would be easier. No, I have I'm entering my 20th year of college coaching, and burnout is going to happen no matter what at different varying levels of it. There are some years by the end of the spring, I am like fried. And it's because you're just go, 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 go. It's, 24/7 for 3, 4 straight months. And then all of a sudden season ends and bam, nothing. Right. And so kind of my burnout happens kind of like towards the end often. And it's like that transition to off season is really, really difficult. And that's when I go through, I don't even know if I would consider it burnout. That's when I go through, like, my wife and I joke and call it postseason depression. Every year I go through this sad. It gets better every year because I'm better at managing my emotions throughout the year. I'm better at taking days off in season to model that to the athletes,
Hmm.
and better at doing all the little self care activities that 20 years ago Sara would laugh at, you know? And I'm teaching that to them. And so it's by me helping myself not get burned out as much, I'm helping the athletes learn those skills too. And that's really important to me. But I don't think you can ever completely avoid some level of a little bit of burnout where you're just kind of over it. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I have to really listen to others in my life, in particular my husband and like my staff. They're really good about saying, "Tony, you're burning the candle at both ends." And when I start saying I'm trying to cram 10 pounds of shit in a 5 pound bag, then I know, like, and
Yeah,
my body now physically is starting to tell me when I'm moving
yeah,
towards burnout.
yeah. You just, it's when I wear a whoop, and when I have 7 days in a row of no green recoveries, it's just telling, right? You're just like, you got to back off. You got to take a day. You got to do, like, why am I not recovering? Am I pushing myself too hard? What is it? Are my sleep patterns like? It's just really identifying how can you find a way to take care of yourself. Because before you know it, you're 2 weeks of horrible sleep and, you know, not eating the way you want to because you're on the go. You haven't prepared properly for your meals, and it's one meeting after the other, or travel to this, travel to that, and all the other things that come along with it, where planes get canceled and you're stuck in a city for 2 extra days with a golf team, and you're like, what are we supposed to do without our luggage? That happens. Those are the kinds of things you have to be prepared for them, and then when they happen, you have to adjust. You
Yeah.
have to take more time.
Yeah, and the work that you and I have done in our personal lives, which beyond pro sports, we connect on living alcohol-free lives,
Yeah,
which is really kind of where this started, has helped, right? Because we have gained so much insight in doing this self work, like the inside work.
yeah, yeah. It is.
And so, talk a little about that. So, like the podcast is "Women in dot dot dot." You're a woman in sports. You're a woman in living alcohol free. You're a woman author. So, share with my listeners, like, what made you decide to stop drinking and look at that.
Yeah. I was trying to stop drinking for a long time, and here's the deal: is I could go 100 days without drinking, no problem, because
Hmm.
I am an athlete, and when I set a goal, I am going to do it 92.5% of the time, and then I'm going to feel really guilty that 7.5% if I don't, right? Um, and so athletics both saved me from drinking and it made me drink more. And so my whole life, I went to Penn State, big party school, learned how to party there. And, when you're a college athlete, there's a lot of extra stress on you, and there's a lot of, there's the party atmosphere, and you're supposed to be able to do it all. And I just kind of learned how to party there. And alcohol kind of came and went throughout my life. And just the longer I went through my life, I realized alcohol is too much the center of my life. And I think when COVID hit and sitting at home drinking daily, because what else was I going to do? I mean, I was doing like workouts in the kitchen on Zoom with friends from across the country, right? And taking the dog for walks. But other than that, like, you were stuck. And it was like, let's just watch Netflix and drink wine. And so I started to become the person I didn't want to be. And, I talk a lot about that in my second book about I just became a mean person, and I'm not a mean person. And so I just realized I had to change. And someone in my life went alcohol free for the year of 2021. And I watched her do it. And I was like, I saw the life changes she made. And I'm like, I can do that. So January 1st, 2022, I made a commitment to stop drinking for 1 year. And I think it was a week in my journals, I was shifting it towards thinking about doing it for my life. Because I started to see like how much was changing. I was doing all of the things that we talk about, the meditation, the workouts, the drinking water, eating the vegetables, but I was pairing it with a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc every night, right? Or more, to be honest, right?
Right.
And so that was the one thing that was holding me back. And then you go to my professional life, I'm a college coach, and I'm telling my athletes, be your best self, 1% better every day. Like, I'm trying to model behavior, but behind closed doors, I'm fighting an addiction to alcohol. And that was the two things. The fact that I used to get mean to my wife once I got to a certain point, and I realized I wasn't truly being the best role model. The athletes didn't know that was happening. I mean, now they do if they've read the book. But those were the two things that were life-changing for me, that I need to be a better coach. I have to be a woman of my word. And so those were the big catalysts for doing it. And now next week, it's 2.5 years.
That's so awesome. Congratulations. You should be coming up in the next 90 days or so on like 1,000 days. I don't know.
Trauma Day is coming September 26th, 2024.
Okay. I knew you would know because that's such a big day. And it's, like these mile markers, they're important for some. Some people don't count, some people do. I like to. I think it's motivational. I think the athlete in both of us,
Yeah.
I think the reason we hit it off is because I'm the same way. I set a goal, I'm gonna frickin' do it.
Yeah.
And if I don't, if I'm 92.5%, I feel guilty. You said something that's really, because people ask, so people look at, there's a lot of people in my life that still drink, as is yours. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know who you surround yourself with daily, but our culture is very, pro alcohol. And one of the questions I get asked, or the assumptions that are made, is that this was a light switch for people like you and I. Like we just said, we're going to stop drinking, and it was effortless. Would you describe it that way?
Not at all. Honestly, the not drinking part was the easiest part for me. Because that's like the actionable thing the unactionable thing that I could do. It's all the other shit that came along with it, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's the childhood trauma that I actually have to start working on. Oh, there's the communication things. There's the depression and anxiety that was underneath that I was massaging with alcohol. That was the hard stuff. Because I had said, like, I would do dry January every year. I would do sober October. I would do dry golf season. And my whole thing was, if anyone made a hole in one, that would end dry golf season, right? What a great model for the college athletes when I used to do that. It was so stupid now that I'm looking back at it. But the thing is, if I can share what I've learned with, I have a great new therapist, and she taught me the difference between abstinence and recovery and harm reduction. And I haven't listened to the rest of your podcast yet, so I don't know if you've talked about these.
I haven't. This is great, so go for it.
Abstinence is dry January. You're not drinking, right? And I was really good at abstaining, but I was just waiting for February 1st, or waiting for the end of golf season, or waiting for day 101 because I was going to go 100 days no alcohol. I was trying to prove to myself I didn't have a drinking problem. And it's like, that's not me. I'm an athlete. I'm fine, right? I did the same thing with therapy 20 years ago. I'm like, I don't need therapy. I'm tough. So stupid, right? So abstinence was really easy for me. Once I decided to quit with no end in sight of drinking again and realizing this is likely, and now this is plan is lifetime, the rest of my lifetime, I will not drink alcohol. That's when you go into recovery, where you start handling all of the things that you were hiding, that you were running from, that you were numbing. And you might not have realized that you were numbing it. And that's what recovery is you start like changing your life. You start seeing the people in your life that are your people versus aren't. You start having new people in your life that are going on the same path as you. For me, my mother passed away about 5 years ago, and she suffered from severe bipolar disorder. And I used to like to blame everything on my mom, and I realized it's not. Some of it I can put on her, but it started taking ownership of some decisions I've made and some ways I've handled things. And so that's the recovery. And then harm reduction is something that I wish I could do. We were talking about this before we recorded. Harm reduction is someone who maybe wants to have alcohol in their life and is trying to find ways to reduce the harm and can do that. The people that can have one glass of wine. Like, I wish I was that person. Like, good for you if you can do that, right? For me, one glass turned into 5. And so not everyone, I always tell people, I am not anti-alcohol, right? Like for me, I couldn't handle alcohol. And that's the issue. I have no problem. Like I was at dinner a couple of weeks ago and someone said to me, like whispered, I was thinking maybe we shouldn't all order wine. And I was like, no, I appreciate that. And this is my choice, right? Like if I gave up chocolate, you wouldn't not be ordering chocolate cake if you wanted it, right? So, but the harm reduction is things like having a glass of wine or drinking non-alcoholic beers on a couple of days instead of beers, right? Like, or, just putting caps and limitations on whatever your thing is. And so like, I can't do harm reduction and I can do abstinence, but that's just not good enough. So that's why I decided to go into recovery and here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is not easy because our culture is so, as I mentioned earlier, pro alcohol. And so it's there's a lot of sober curiosity out I've noticed a lot since I quit drinking almost 4 years ago. And then I stopped drinking before that 8 years ago. But it's moved, the alcohol-free culture has taken a giant leap in the last 4 or 5 years, which is fantastic. But a lot of what this work is, like I said, it's an inside job. But you said something really key when you said, I'm going to do 2022 alcohol-free. And one of the things that it sounds oversimplified, but what you did there was you made a firm decision.
Yeah.
And there's no third door. And the third door, depending on if certain books that are in this, and I want to talk about obviously your books, but like the third door is moderation, right? Like either you drink, you don't drink, or that third door is like, the harm reduction or the glorious moderation, which I always aspired to do, but never quite could. But you made a firm decision. Mm-hmm. So if you could describe that, like what making a firm decision for someone like you looks like, is that athlete in you, right? Because when you decide to do something, you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the firm decision is this is what I'm doing. But beyond that, it's how am I going to do it? Who are my people? What does my routine start to look like? I made the firm decision and I didn't have the greatest plan, to be honest, from there. I'm like, I'm just giving up alcohol. I live out loud. So I announce it on my social media. I tell all my friends, I tell the golf team I'm giving up alcohol for a year. Like, I'd speak very openly. I think that's just how I live. I think that's the best way is to connect with people. You need to share who you are and what you're doing. And so I made that firm decision. I'm giving up alcohol for a year. I quite honestly don't think I went into it with the best plan. There were a few things that came up that I did not realize were going to be an issue. And I've done the no drinking for a certain amount of days. So I'm aware that there is alcohol everywhere. I live in San Francisco. Like, it's everywhere, right? And so I didn't always have a plan for certain things, and that I just went through and learned to create that plan. Which I'm kind of glad I went through that messiness, that messy middle. And I wrote a lot about it in the book because I'm hoping that will help someone else to realize you have to think about not just what's the firm decision, but how are you going to support that firm decision? So I'm kind of glad I went into it and screwed up a little bit, because it made it a lot better now.
Oh, absolutely. And you did something that when I coach my clients in this space, I tell them, I said, there's some silver bullets in this. There are. And one of them is how you describe living out loud.
Yeah.
And the more loopholes, I call it loopholes, closing loopholes, because Tony loved to crawl through a good old loophole. And so if I didn't talk about it and live out loud, as you so beautifully put, then that was leaving a loophole for me to crawl through later. And that is a silver. So and then that leads to personality. Personality plays a giant role, because you're just someone that is really outgoing and wants to connect with people and share what's going on in your life. And so those things aid in your ability to be almost 1,000 days alcohol free, which is just huge. And that comes naturally to you. For some people, it's not like that, but you're just such a great role model, obviously, for the people around you, your student athletes. And it's really cool. It's really cool to see. And it's supposed to be messy. If this were easy, everyone would do it.
Right. Yeah. I'm just really grateful I've gotten to this point, and I feel like I am living my best life right now. And it's taken a lot of hard work. A lot. I'm tired.
Amen. So tell me about, who are the women in your life? Like, who are the women that are like most important in your inner circle for you?
Ugh, there's so many. I wasn't sure how I was going to answer this question, because I had a feeling you were going to ask this, right? Obviously, my wife is the most important, besides myself, the most important woman in my life. She is fantastic. She is really, in fact, she made a comment the other day about how she feels like she's watched me grow over the last 10 years in a way that like, she wasn't trying to be condescending. She was just like, I'm seeing you grow into the person I knew you were, basically. And she has just been the greatest support in my life for everything. The other really important person in my life, I didn't think I was going to say this, was my mom. Mm-hmm. And I think the important people in your life don't necessarily have to be a positive thing. Because my mom, I struggled with my mom, suffering from severe bipolar disorder. She had a lot of health issues. She dealt with diabetes, obesity, ended up dying of cancer. Did not have the lifestyle that I lived. And so my mom, she had a huge heart. She was deep down wanted to be like a really good person. She just didn't know how to. She didn't have the tools. And so me growing up, my goal was always to be the opposite of my mom, right? And kind of in a mean way, honestly. Like, don't want to be like, if my sister and I wanted to, my sister's one of the other women. Yeah. If my sister and I wanted to be mean to each other, we would say, stop being like mom, right? Now, 5 years on the other side of her passing, I have more compassion for her. I wish I had it when she was still alive, but I have more compassion for what she was trying to go through. And that's a hard place to get to. And so I think I am living my best life because of what I went through and what my mom taught me, even though I don't think she was trying to teach it to me, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, that's something that it took me a long time to be able to get to say any of that. I used to be so mad and so angry at her. And I actually read back my book before that officially got released. And some of the things I say in there sound kind of harsh about my mom, but it's like my true feelings about how mad I was at her and how angry I was. And I talk about how she used to be like my worst enemy. But at the same time, I loved her and she tried, so I'm still doing the work. I got therapy this afternoon. I'm doing EMDR. I'm doing all the stuff. Yeah. And then a couple of other coaches that I've had. I had some male coaches, and there are some fantastic male coaches for women. It was really important to me to have a college coach who was female. Mm-hmm. And my college coach was a big role model for me when I played for her. And she's the one that got me into coaching. And I'm really, really grateful for that. She's the one that asked me to come back to Penn State and coach. And then my swing coach growing up, we didn't call them swing coaches back then. We were just like, your teaching pro. Debbie Murphy, she's still in my life. She sells my books in the golf course shop that she's at, right? Um, I still connect with her when I go home to Rochester, New York, and it's because of some of these women that believed in me, and that's why I am where I am right now. And there are a lot of men as well, right? But it's just for me being female identified, like really important to have female role models because while men can be really really good role models, they don't know what we're going through. It's like the alcohol free living. It's really important to have alcohol free people in your life because while my wife is a fantastic support, she still drinks alcohol. She doesn't know what I'm going through. She watches it, she tries to understand it, but you have to have, different role models. So I went on a tangent, but it felt like it made sense.
I did. Well, what you're describing is your personal board of directors.
Yeah.
Like these people and the women in your life, and there are men too. And I'm so glad you brought this up because I have male guests on my podcast too, because there are like men came from women too, like
Right.
so. And I always joke I'm not anti-man. I've been married to 3 of them. Like I love men, so it's
Well, and I'm gay and I'm not anti-man. I've never been married to one. Right.
right, right. It's like there's a role for everyone, and this is about who lifted you up. And I love hearing about those women in your life because that's where this podcast was born from. Because I was speaking at my alma mater, and one of the questions they asked me at this was who were your female mentors, and you and I are the same age, but as I was coming up in the business world, all my mentors were men,
Yeah.
and especially in sports, in men's professional hockey. I mean, I'm working on breaking all kinds of barriers here, and it's not easy. So it's like, okay, I want to change that conversation for my kids' generation, right? So
Absolutely.
working on that. Okay, let's talk about the books and especially the book you just released. I was so honored, like I said in the intro, for you to ask me to read this before it was published, and I took it. I had my assistant print it for me, and I took it. I was traveling a lot and in the winter for work, and I took it with me in every city, and I was reading it. And sometimes when I can't sleep in the middle of the night and I wake up, I will read, and it didn't take me long because it was so good. And the reason I loved your book, so it's in this what I call or I'm sure you do quit lit genre. Like for people that don't know what quit lit is, it's about quitting. It's quitting literature. The
Yeah.
cute term is quit lit. But what I love about your book, Sarah, one, the authenticity behind it, but two, you are the first author that I am aware of in this space in the LGBTQ plus community. And I am a huge advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion. We are the proud pioneers of the Kalamazoo Wings of Rainbow Ice. We dye our ice rainbow in January every year. And
I'm coming in January to see you. I hope it's in the beginning of January.
it's January. It is January 4th in
All right.
this year.
See if
I
I can
would love to. I'd be honored to have you.
that would be good.
That was my baby. It was my brainchild, and I am so proud of it. And and it really stands for hockey is for everyone. But I digress I was just so thrilled to hear you were writing a book, and then when you asked me to read it and write an endorsement, I was like, oh my God, yes. So talk about that and talk about the book, and then how you managed to write this while you're in the middle of your regular day-to-day life, because it's a lot.
Well, it was actually okay. So the reason I'll start why I decided to write this book. I wrote a book a couple years ago, which I'm pretty proud of. And now that I look back, I was still drinking at the time. And there's so much in that book that I cringe thinking about that I wish I could change. Maybe I'll do a second version. But it's out there. And I'm proud of the first book, which is called Your Future Self Will Thank You. It's kind of a life lessons book. And it really was geared towards college athletes as they're graduating or just college students. But the second one, I had already worked with a company that helped me publish the first one, and I self-published, but they helped with the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I started thinking about, I'm gonna give up alcohol for a year. I'm gonna journal through it. So I reached out to Kelly from Scripture Publishing and asked her. I met with her and I said, I'm thinking about maybe writing a book about my journey of alcohol and giving it up, and I don't know if I'm doing this for more than a year. And what do you think? And she just said, just write, just capture all of the data, capture the events, capture the emotions, just write. And so I started writing at the end of 2021, middle of December, kind of my journey of like, I'm about to give up alcohol for a year. And then I journaled for 2 years. And you can see I journaled a lot to start. And then I just didn't, it was a little more sporadic, but it gave me the data. It gave me, data seems weird, but like the experiences. It gave me all of the stuff. Because you get to the other side of 2 years, and I wanted to write a book at that point. I'm like, I'm going to miss so much, right? So many instances. So I just journaled, and I decided to turn that into a book. And the reason I really wanted to do it was because, especially in the beginning of 2022, when I quit, I read a lot of Quit Lit, and they were all fantastic. I started with Quit Like a Woman, which is one of my favorites. Read This Naked Mind. That's what it's called, right?
Yes.
Obviously, I ended up reading Peggy's book, and then I met someone who introduced me to Peggy, and I didn't realize she was the person's book who I was reading at the time. I loved it. But most of the books, not all of them, most of them were from women who were straight and talked about mommy wine culture. And I couldn't totally relate to that. I've never had kids. I've never wanted kids. I feel like I have 8 kids on a golf team that I coach, and those are the kids I have. And so I thought, it would be interesting to write it from a different perspective of someone in the LGBT community, someone in college athletics, and someone without kids. And then add on to that, I realized someone whose spouse still drinks was a big theme of this book. And we had no idea that the fact that my wife still drinks alcohol was going to be such a hard thing for me. I never even thought about it. Just kind of silly now that I look back. But it just felt like there was a space for it. And so that's kind of the behind the scenes was I just wrote. And then I tried really hard to keep my journal entries as true as they were when I wrote them. There's some that I cut out that I realized they were just too personal and I didn't want to put it out there. There were some that I just had to kind of like, my writing was sloppy, so I just like cleaned it up, but I tried to keep it as authentic to my actual experience, right? I obviously knew if I was going to put it in print, I didn't want a bunch of typos, right? But it was just interesting to see the journey I went on. And then the journey I went on was the journey that I read about in the other books. The pink cloud and the wall stage and all that stuff. Like I was like living it in real life. And so towards the end of the book, I decided to do it and stop at 2 years because I felt like that was a good amount of time. And I went back and read the beginning and I'm like, I don't even remember her. Like, and it's so crazy. I'm just so if I'm the only person that reads this book, it did work for me. And that's what matters.
Well, you got 2 people. I read it, and I know there's a lot more. You wrote about something really interesting to me, and obviously I take interest in the sports side of it too. But you really, at one point, you were like, I'm going to be walking away from my career in golf. And you were very open about that. And I was like, I value so much when people can be authentic and transparent and just try to eradicate shame. But that could have been a space. Like the fact that you wrote about that, you published this book and you're still working, So talk about that. And because I've gone in my head sometimes, I'm like, I'm just going to coach and I'm going to do all this stuff. My coaching business, not coach hockey. I always have to separate the two because people mix them up. But so talk about that and being brave enough and courageous enough to write about that and leave it in the book and be in a different space with it because you're 20 years in now.
Yeah. Well, I found out what I was going through. So the first 6 months of 2022, I went through a really bad depression. And I've been on antidepressants for 15 years, but I was always drinking. And so it was kind of blocking my antidepressants from doing the work properly. And I realized about 2 or 3 months into 2022, I was so depressed. I had so many things going on. I was trying to run this golf team. We had the best spring season of any golf team I've ever coached. And I was like, I felt just sad inside. I'm like, all the things that I've ever wanted are happening. Like maybe coaching isn't for me. And I put a plan in action to leave college coaching. Mm-hmm. And I decided to keep it in the book because I told the team a year later about my experience. And, fast forward a year after I made that decision to quit coaching, slowly I got to the other side of that depression through doing daily activities, through all the things that, I am telling the athletes to do. I'm like, I'm just going to keep going. I have another year on my contract. I'm going to keep going. And then partway through that next school year, I'm like, I am not done at all. Like, thank God I got to the other side of that. And so I decided to sit down with the team at the end of that next school year and tell them that I was planning to retire. I was planning to sit at that table at that golf tournament, our last tournament of the year, and tell them I was retiring. And their eyes were like, and I shared it with them because I wanted them to see you can go through really hard things and get to the other side. And you have to know when's the right time to walk away. It was absolutely not the right time to walk away. But I was in such a dark cloud. I just didn't I didn't see a way that I could keep coaching. And the reason I decided to keep it is just for that, is like modeling the behavior that I want the athletes to see. I had some athletes on the team that were going through some really hard things at that time. Every year athletes are going through hard things. And if I'm not vulnerable and share with them, like how would I expect them to be vulnerable and share with me? And so I am just so grateful. I signed another contract. Like I'm back in it. I honestly, this last school year we had a really good year. Like we said, we had a player that made it to postseason, but I don't want to say but, and I really just, I had so much fun this year again, and I'm like back in it. And so that's why I decided to keep it in there. Because I'm not ashamed of it, it's what I went through.
Yeah. And as I said, I love that because this is when I decided to be really outspoken about my relationship with alcohol or whatever I'm dealing with, breaking down barriers for women in sports and things like that. It's through that authenticity and that transparency because I think as women, there are stereotypes that, we're graceful or we should be graceful and quiet and
Not
demure.
graceful.
Neither am I. I'm like a freaking bull in a china shop, and it's and it's all bullshit. So I love that you kept that in there, and you are role modeling the behavior. We talk about I'm talking about this next generation. That's who you're working with, the next generation, and it's just and the other thing too that's fascinating is when you choose to remove one thing from your life, like alcohol, this one thing, it is a giant identity shift. And as you said earlier, you said goodbye to that old version of you. But that is a giant transition and it's so much better over here. But it's uncomfortable. Like who the heck am I? We don't even know what we're feeling like. But we're going through this giant identity shift and it comes with a lot of emotions and uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. But I finally feel like I've given myself the chance to live the life that I really, really want. And it just feels awesome, right? I just to look back at that person at the beginning of even look back at the person in like 2019, 2020, when I was like just like so much inner turmoil. I was at war with myself in my head all the time. I was tortured. And I have given myself the opportunity to like take that away and be kind to myself. And it's been such a great transition. And I'm a better wife, I'm a better coach, I'm a better sister, hopefully a better daughter. Even this is silly. I just looked down looking at my dog. I'm a better dog mom because I used to like shorten up dog walks because I had to go to the bathroom because I had to drink 2 glasses of wine. Right now, I'm like, leave my phone at home, enjoy the dog walk, let him decide where we're going. Like I'm taking care of my dog better because I don't drink. And you don't think about the things that are going to change. Like I didn't set a goal to like lose weight. I don't like to talk about weight, but to get fitter, I guess I should say. But I got fitter because I gave up alcohol, because my workouts were better, because I was drinking more water, because I was having more vegetables, because I wasn't eating a pizza and craving carbs after a night of drinking, right? And so it's just this is one thing that I try to teach to the team. You make one change, it can change 17 other things that you didn't even realize.
It is so true, and such a great age to teach them. I have my oldest, my stepdaughter. She's a college athlete, and she's 22, and so she's living with us right now, and so she sees me role modeling this behavior, and just it's interesting to and we have nice conversations about it. And I have a 20-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter too. And it's like, listen, you guys are going to live your lives. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm role modeling. Like, and you need to go through your own experiences. But let me tell you, you know, um, the juice isn't necessarily worth the squeeze, but
You have so many great phrases. I should write them all down.
I try, you know. Okay, so
If I could share something about that age group
yeah,
quickly, I feel really fortunate to work with 18 to 22-year-olds. And there's so many of them that come to me that are trying to live small,
mm,
that aren't live, are afraid, that are have so much fear, care what so many people think about them. And I'm 45 and I still feel that way. And I'm learning to take up space and to live the life I want, because this is like, it's all trite. Like, this is your one precious life. Do with it what you want, but it's real, and so to be able to help this younger generation get to this point where they can show up authentically and true. And who cares if the picture on social media, your hair is out of place? Who cares if you have a double chin in that picture because the way your face is? Like, you're living, like, live your best life. Like, and I try real hard to help them with, like, pay attention to what matters. And it's hard. It's a hard time of their life. And I feel really grateful to coach people of that age, because I get them to they'll call me 10 years later and say thank you. Because in fact, last week I was on a company call with a former student athlete from my last job, for Pride Month. And I was out at my last job at a Catholic school, and she came in as a freshman, and that made her feel like she could come out.
yeah.
She graduated 10 years ago. Actually, I left before her senior year, and which was hard. But we're still connected, and she's asking me to be a speaker on a call. And like, that's the stuff that matters. She doesn't remember what she shot at a tournament, but she remembers that she felt safe, and that is what's really important.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and obviously the age group is just it's special to me too because all three of my kids are smack in it. So I'm so glad to see that you're doing that work and with that age group because I mean the science, I could dive down the science rabbit hole, but their brains are not fully developed till they're 25.
Yep. I always say
So
it's not their fault when they make a decision that's off. Wait till you're 26, then it's your fault.
then it's your fault. You're off your parents' insurance and your decisions are your fault. So one of the things I ask all my podcast guests, like you and I've talked a lot about how we changed our minds about alcohol. It's like the low hanging fruit. But what else have you changed? Well, and you also talked about how you've changed your mind about how you view your relationship with your mom in hindsight. But what else have you changed your mind about recently? It can be huge, like alcohol or your relationship with your mom, or it could be something big or small, like, I don't know. You're not eating Pop Tarts anymore. I don't know. But what have you changed your mind about recently?
I don't remember the last time I had a Pop Tart, but that sounds delicious.
Doesn't it?
More recently, and we haven't talked much about it I've mentioned it, that my wife still drinks alcohol in moderation, and she can do harm reduction. When I started, I struggled a little bit with the fact that she still drank alcohol. Part of me really wanted her to quit drinking. I have changed my mind on that. She gets to do what she wants to do. And I don't want to see her go alcohol free because she doesn't need to, she doesn't want to. And that's okay. That has been a big shift in the last 9 to 10 months.
Yeah.
And that's been really, really important. We set boundaries about certain things around alcohol in the house. There's certain places that we don't have it. There's certain rules that we have around it just to support me. There's many days a week that it's alcohol-free day. There's no alcohol in anything. And she is willing and able and on board with that. And I was hurting our marriage by forcing my drinking problems on her.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that. And we would play that dance where I was like, I'm going to give up alcohol. You should do it too. And then 4 days later, I start drinking, and I wouldn't talk about it. And she'd be like, we're not quitting again, right? Like, it just was messy. So I think I don't know if I'm being as eloquent as I want about this, but that's what I've changed my mind on, is that, I'm in a really good place in my marriage, and Pat, my wife, and I have done a really good job of creating that space. And I don't want her to give up alcohol. She does not have a problem. I did. And
Yeah.
so that's like what I said earlier. I'm not anti-alcohol. I am grateful for people that can go and have a nice glass of red wine and enjoy it. My glass of red wine turned into not remembering. So
Yeah. Well, and the cats, and then of course my husband Josh's of the world, um, they are such gifts, right?
yeah,
They're gifts to us, and we all have our stuff. You and I have our thing is alcohol, but everyone has a thing. And if Kat were to come to you with her thing, it's not like you wouldn't support her in whatever that is, right? Or Josh comes to me with his thing. I get it. We get it,
yeah,
and we're very fortunate to have those type of spouses and
yeah,
life partners, because it's not a black or white
yeah.
topic.
And some people think it should be, and I just don't agree with that. At least for me, some people think if you quit, your spouse should quit. No, and also like if you, it's some people say, well, you can't compare it to chocolate or sugar or something else. Like it's bigger than that. It's like it's really not.
Mm-mm.
Alcohol is prevalent everywhere, and it's this weird thing. And I remember, I don't remember which author talks about it, that alcohol is the only drug in our society we have to justify not taking. Right. And I joke in the book, like if I was like, I'm giving up cocaine for 2022, people will be like, of course you are. I don't
Yep.
do cocaine. Just letting everyone know. Right. But like if I was giving up cocaine, Kat wouldn't have cocaine in the house. Right. So like she gets to have wine in the house. So there's that weird like juxtaposition around it, but I'm okay with it. And so like it seems like a strange thing, but there's just I don't know. I don't think all of my decisions have to be her decisions and vice versa.
Right. Well, you're
I'm
two
just really
different people.
yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for the support. And I'm just grateful that I've gotten to a better spot with it.
Yeah. Good for you. Well, that is recovery,
Yeah.
right? Like you were talking about the difference. All right. So, where can people find you, find your books, find all things Sarah? As they listen to this podcast and they're like, I gotta read this book or connect with her. Where can they find you?
And it's Sara Doell. I think you
Okay.
said it wrong in the beginning. Sorry.
My apologies.
When I say it. It's Sarah, it's like Dole, like the banana, but not spelled that way. That's how I used to introduce myself in junior golf. SarahDoleCoaching.com is my website. It's amateur website. I put it together. I'm kind of proud of it. But on there are the links to be able to buy it, or you can just go to Amazon and look it up. And we didn't talk much about it. We've talked about my college coaching career. I do have a life coaching business as well. And that's one of the things you and I connected on. And that's one of the things that I do, how do I say it? For fun, right? I have 2 or 3 clients at a time, and that's a lot of fun for me. And yeah, it's nice to make a little extra money on the side, but I'm doing it because I want to help people. And so that's kind of why I have the website, was for my life coaching, and I have some links on there for the books as well. So, and at Sarah Dole on all of the social media things.
Yeah,
Or
and
at least
just so
the ones I
people
want.
know what type of coaching when it is life coaching, because I do lifestyle coaching is how I coined it, because I focus on fitness, nutrition, and substances. But what do you coach on if someone's interested in?
Honestly, I'm more of a generalized life coach. I haven't decided to really, create a niche. It's interesting. I have 3 clients right now. One is 19, one is 45, and one is 70. Right.
I love it.
So really, the college athlete and people being able or who are exiting college athletics and losing their identity after college athletics is really one of my strongest life coaching skills. But I really feel like I have kind of this skill set in coaching to really help people go from where they are to where they want to be by making it super simple. So if I feel like a client comes to me and I'm not prepared or I don't feel like I'm the right coach, I just offer up a different coach. So I really try to vet people and make sure that I'm the right coach for them and we have a good rapport. I feel like rapport is everything in coaching.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I am just so grateful that you spent this time with me and shared your story and your wisdom and just everything that has made Sarah Sarah. So thanks for being on, Sarah.
Of course, I'm going to see you on January 4th for the rainbow thing,
Yes, I will
the
send you
rainbow ice.
information. I will send you information on Rainbow Ice. It is just, I'd love to have you and Kat out and whoever would like to come. It is phenomenal. We're the only team in professional sports to dye the rainbow. We don't use ice mapping like some of the teams do, which is through projection. It's the real deal, hand painted. So I would love to have you out.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sara.
Hey, thank you for having me.